So Westmoreland is a public nonprofit. We have around 630, 640 acres. I have good news tonight. We are going to add to that in the fall. So we're pretty happy about that. And we are located in the towns of Bedford and North Castle, and we're in the Greenwich-Stamford CBC circle. So the main question that we get a lot of times is, how did this name originate, the Westmoreland Sanctuary? Is it General Westmoreland? I've never heard he was interested in nature, and it is not General Westmoreland. The sanctuary was started by a lady named Helen Clay Frick, and she was the daughter of Henry Clay Frick, who you may have heard of, famous Pennsylvania steel magnate. And she started the sanctuary. And if you know anything about Henry Clay Frick and Andrew Carnegie, you know they were basically based in Pittsburgh, and that happens to be Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania. So that's how that name originated. So what I'm going to show you guys next is a map of the sanctuary and some of the work that I've been working on as the director of conservation. So this is the map of the current sanctuary. We'll be adding to this northern section up here and adding another trail up here too, which we're very excited about. But you can see on the left here, can you guys see my my cursor?
Yeah, move it around a bit.
It's on the map now? No? That's okay. Let's see. Try laser pointer. About now?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're on the west here is 684 and Chestnut Ridge Road. And then bisecting the sanctuary is Route 22 right here. And the town line between Bedford and North Castle goes about like this, right through the center of it. What I have established in conservation, as far as the conservation plan for the property, is what I call the island effect. There's no way I can actively, manage this whole property with myself and the few people that we have on staff and even volunteers. So we've created this kind of island strategy where we identified, places where there's the possibility of managing, kind of a rare or unusual habitat or special habitats, whatever you want to call them. And a lot of times they're associated with really interesting bird species as well. So some of the obvious ones are obviously wetlands, like you can see over here on the east side, and vernal pools, which some of you probably know about, are obviously hotspots that were top of the list. And then we have some areas that are field habitat, young forest and shrub habitat, and even evergreen habitat that we have identified to focus on. And then also, what is the access? What is the ease of access and things like that are also taken into consideration. So a lot of what happens is actually on this high inundated area of wetlands on the east side here. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's very different soil profile over here too. It's very sandy. It's very Long Island-like. There's a big sand vein that's going north to south here. This happens to be the Mianus River, but it's the Mianus River as it's going north before it turns around and heads down through the Mianus River Gorge. So all this land is all New York, the New York Sound, Long Island Sound watershed. And this dividing line is basically the ridge that we call Chestnut Ridge here, where on the west side, it's all Hudson Valley for the most part, or Hudson River watershed. So anyway, some of the areas that we have been working on are a riparian area. Let's see if I can draw it. By the way, I get to live right here, which is the biggest perk of this job. And then this whole riparian area right here, and all up and down here, we've been managing and focusing on, but specifically kind of right by the road here where there's an inundation of invasive species. We're very cognizant of trying not to disturb areas that have, you know, a pretty high quality of habitat. So for the most part, we're concentrating right here. You'll see a picture of some of that basically. And then the rest of it tends to focus mainly around this area here, the educational campus, which is for a variety of reasons. It just happens to have a variety of different areas. And then it also has ease of access. We can get trucks and equipment here and volunteers. It's pretty hard to get a volunteer to hike, you know, a mile into the center and then tell them to pull a whole bunch of invasives. And by the way, there's no bathroom. So it's all been taken into consideration. Over here on the east side, because I'm going to concentrate on the west side in a minute, is a lot of bluebird fields, a lot of a woodcocker over there. In fact, I think is Ken Novenstern. I don't know if Ken Novenstern's still on your board. I think he is.
Yeah.
I introduced him to woodcock over there. His first woodcock we're seeing right over here. It's not a lot of woodcock, so it's never as popular and good for that much of a public program as it is where Ann takes you guys. And like at Pound Ridge and places like that, where there's like usually woodcock, if you time it right, everywhere. And then there's a lot of wood ducks over here too. Sometimes during the CBC, I've been the only person to get a wood duck, and it's usually somewhere over here. This is a vernal pool right here that gets wood ducks on migration. On this little vernal pool, it's probably not more than a quarter of an acre or an eighth of an acre. I've seen 40 wood ducks on that thing during migration. And then I'm going to show you some surprises that we found this year with our game cameras or our trail cameras in a minute. There's also pink lady slipper over here. There's a lot of wildflowers over here with the fields. If you know wildflowers and the swamp, there's things like lesser purple fringed orchid over here, which it's hard to get through the swamp to look for it, but we did not find it this year, so we're a little worried. But with all the flooding and stuff, we're sure it's somewhere. A lot of box turtles and wood turtles over here as well. And then highlighted are the brook trout over here, a keystone species. So a lot of our management over there has been focused on supporting them with climate change. So these are not stocked trout. They are reproducing there. And if you don't know, this animal right here is a marbled salamander that can be found in some of our vernal pools on the property. Okay, so I'll move to the next slide. This is kind of what we do when we do a conservation project, when we get funding, is we are normally dealing with invasive species and then deer at the same time. So we're trying to reverse that, or at least stop that degradation of habitat quality. And it usually means, you know, removing invasive species, planting native species, and then protecting them from deer until they get established. And that takes years and years and years of work. So that's why we have to be careful because even when you do it, you still have to maintenance it for at least usually 4 or 5 years. Some of these species will grow tall enough where we'll eventually be able to remove the fences. And we've actually started to do that on some of our earliest projects, which is kind of cool to be able to do that. And it's pretty effective most of the time, although we're still in the early stages of a lot of this. And then I'll keep an eye out for native species that pop up there that are in danger of being eaten by deer. So you can see the flower here, New York aster. I think that's New York aster. So that if I spot something like that, and sometimes I'm able to spot them even before they bloom, we immediately put protection around it to keep deer from eating it. So I'm going to show you the highlight for conservation this summer. And it happens to be bird related. You can see on the right here, we have a birdhouse that we put up. Don't ask me how I put it up there because definitely not OSHA approved. This is a barred owl house. And lo and behold, on our trail camera, just this summer, we got barred owls. So this was definitely used. Right now, I can't really check it because right now it has a bald-faced hornet nest in it, so I'm not going near it. But anyway, it's quite a coincidence that we put this up and then got these wonderful barred owls. And if you guys stick around, if I don't talk too much, which is a problem, I'll show you a video of them hunting at night in the stream at the end. So we got a lot of animals on our trail camera, probably the most trail camera footage we've ever gotten this year. This is a coyote, but there's a lot of other cool stuff. If we have time at the end, I'll show you. Okay, so birding at Westmoreland. I'm just going to show you, and some of you probably know this by now. You know, you don't have to go all over the property searching for birds, and probably to be economically with your time, you really only need to focus on this area right here to see at least a larger variety of birds. Of course, you guys who came searching for the Kentucky warbler this year, you know that that's not always the case, and I'm sorry that that guy moved on. But anyway, so this is where we're doing our bird banding. This is also where we're doing a lot of our islands. So the yellow is open areas here. Let me draw here. So the yellow here is a pollinator field. Not only is this a pollinator field, but this is a wet pollinator field. So I've got high hopes for that. It's probably one of our oldest projects, and it's really coming along. Here, this is the shrub corridor, that the other island that we're working on. We definitely need funding for that to take it any further. This is a dry field right here called catbird field. So this is, you know, got growing opportunities and species opportunities, at least for wildflowers and insects and butterflies that are different than the wet field. And then next, kind of on our agenda, is evergreen spots here. We have pine warblers nesting in this section here. And of course, it's great for me when I take kids out to see red squirrels. And then this is the sandy damage area right here. So this was a pine area and evergreen area, and this got hammered by Hurricane Sandy. And now it's this young forest. So it's a lot of flycatchers in here, orchard orioles I've gotten in here before, white-eyed vireos, stopping by, never any, you know, permanent or nesting setup, but still kind of a fun area that now we're actively managing as a young forest. So that's the picture at the beginning where I'm all in a Tyvek suit. Unfortunately, there's a lot of poison ivy in there, and that's how I handle that. And then you have, this is our bird banding area right here, number 11. This is our main permanent bird banding setup right there. So that area there has been managed for attracting birds for probably over 50 years since we got our bird banding license. That's always a spot that has bird feeders set up. And then in the wintertime, I switched the bird feeders to right behind the building here. So we've gotten some years where we have like really fantastic pine siskins in those areas. And we also will feed oranges there in the springtime. We'll get orioles coming down. And then in that cold, I think it was the cold May of 2000, we got scarlet tanagers coming down to oranges and grape jelly, which was crazy. So that's really the only areas. Of course, you have Bechtel Lake, this great wetland here. So that's really, you know, half hour, 45 minutes. And you'll, you know, during certain times of the year, you'll see tons and tons of birds in those areas. And then, of course, we have the high point here. This is going to be a new 28 acres that there'll be a trail probably heading up this way that will go around and then go out that way. About a 1 mile trail. That's the highest point in Bedford up here. And it's got a vernal pool on it as well. And it also has a high percentage of native understory up there, which is pretty surprising. A lot of blueberries and huckleberries and things like that up there. So we'll be cognizant to try not to disturb that too much. I want to mention one other place here, the outlet stream. This is a really good spot for birds. Great spot, outlet from the pond there. Always a great spot. So this is a little bit of the summit. This is the tower that used to be up there in like the 1930s, and these foundations are still there. So it's going to be pretty exciting. We don't have a particular name for it yet, but we're pretty excited about it, and a lot of other people are too. So just going to go into bird banding here really quickly. Try to keep talking and moving through these. We're basically using bird banding for something that a lot of people don't think of bird banding for. We're using bird banding for education, and we have this is a master banding station at Westmoreland. And if you look at the bird banding lab website and you see the reasons for bird banding, that one of the reasons is education, to educate people about the environment and the importance of birds. So that's what we're really doing. We're not really doing any research or stuff like that, although we do have a small little kind of insider project that we're trying to work on involving tufted titmice. And then I also use it for education, specifically high school, the higher end students in college and high school, who they get some field experience in handling birds. I've just had a student who left, and he was banding rails in Illinois, and he got that job basically because of his experience at Westmoreland, and he took to it like a duck to water anyway. So I could tell he just had no problem. I wish he was still here, but this is the reasons we use this this bird banding. So I'm teaching everybody from preschoolers all the way up to the college kids. So it's a wide variety. So if you don't know what bird banding is, it's basically old school catch, mark, release, and recapture, or encounters as they call it in the bird banding lab study. And it's been going on in one form or another. Bird banding's been going on since Roman times, mainly for putting messages on, passenger pigeons and stuff like that. But doing it for science pretty much started with John James Audubon. I mean, there were a couple other ones, but who you may know, he banded some eastern phoebes in a cave near his house, on his farm in Pennsylvania. And I think he tied, I want to say, a pink yarn or pink ribbon around their legs. And he was able to catch them, I think, because they were going in a cave. And so he put a net across the cave entrance, and then he was able to recapture them, or at least probably see the pink ribbon in the springtime again after migration. And so he kind of proved that, hey, this is the same bird. So nest site fidelity was probably one of the first kind of confirmations of bird banding by John James Audubon. But it's been really handled and organized since 1920. And we have about 100,000, they estimate 100,000 encounters per year, and they band approximately 1.2 banded birds per year. I'm always excited when I catch a bird that's a migratory bird, because I'm like, oh, someone might catch this, so I better pay attention. But this is a picture of the banding net here, the mist net, and the mist net is the main tool of bird banding, and I'll explain a little bit more about it too. But this is a picture of the bands here, and of course a blue-winged warbler. Let's see this. Here's the band here. These are made out of aluminum, most of them. And you can see if they're large enough, they'll put more writing on this, but most of them are tiny, like you see on the blue wing here. And so sometimes they'll definitely be the number on the outside, and then usually they'll have more stuff on the inside. It may be very abbreviated, like send to Washington, D.C. But in the old days, if you found like a bird that hit your window, or your cat killed a bird with a band on it, you could send this in, or nowadays you could just write it down and look it up and submit it via the internet. So what are some of the things we've learned from bird banding? We've learned about and about these Atlantic flyways, or the flyways, I should say. Lifespans of birds. We use it to for game birds. We use this data for establishing hunting regulations and changing hunting regulations each year. Nesting habits and the success, tracking diseases these days, unfortunately with avian flu and things like that. I find ticks on the birds, so I'm always, for birds that visit the ground, I'm always looking to kind of see how the ticks are, and there'll be ticks on their eyes and around the base of their mouths. And also mouth, deformities and things like that. So one of the things that I use I can tell differences as the habitat changes at Westmoreland sometimes. And the best example with that was a red-winged blackbirds and how I used to catch them in the 1990s. And then the dam at the pond, Bechtel Lake, was leaking a lot. And so the water was fluctuating a lot and there wasn't a lot of emergent vegetation. So then you could see the correlation between how many red-winged blackbirds I was catching and not catching over the years. For about 10 years, I didn't catch any. And now we've stabilized it. And unfortunately, it's Phragmites, but there's a decent amount of red-winged blackbirds that we catch every year. So we use, so this is where teaching college kids comes full circle. And now they know, why did I have to learn all this crud in ornithology? And now with the bird banding program, they have to apply that. All those parts of the birds that they learn, and more importantly, parts of the wings, they learn, because it's vital to know these different feathers when you're trying to mainly age a bird. When you're trying to age a bird, you have to know and pay close attention to certain feathers. And patterns on the feathers, wear on the feathers, and things like that. So this is probably my favorite part of the director of conservation, is these young people, and just teaching them and getting them excited, and because they're in a classroom for 3/4 of the year, now they get out and they really see, and you make those connections that, hey, listen, this is what you're doing, and this is making a difference, and this is why you're going through all those tests and everything like that. For some of the younger students, we talk about, basically my motivation is to tell them not all birds are the same. It's not all birds eat worms, not all birds have the same feet or the same beak, and you can really start to pay attention to details, guys, and you can really start to think out of the box, and why would it be that way? And that's the great thing about bird banding and teaching young people about nature in general. And these are soft skills, these are life skills that they're gaining no matter what the subject is. So that's one of the things that I never thought I'd be doing when I was in school, but teaching is absolutely totally empowering. And I mean, we see kids go on who start as little preschoolers and go on to major in college or environmental sciences, and it's crazy. So anyway, this is the mist net. Mist net is there's only a couple manufacturers of mist nets in the country. When you call them, you have to give them your banding license. They will not sell it to anyone else. So this is something you need a license for. But like I said, you could participate by catching birds. Even these days, people are actually sometimes being able to read band numbers. And of course, birds that run into windows and birds that get caught by predators. You could participate that way. But it's basically a thin net. They come in different hole sizes, different lengths, different colors too, for different habitats. If you're catching in the desert or something like that, this is the main thing. And there's lots of different ways to, kind of homeschool ways to carry this. And people are always coming up with ideas of how to transport these. We just have a permanent setup with basically pieces of cedar in the ground. I don't usually transport them to different parts of Westmoreland, but that is probably on the horizon for us. So the other things might be interesting to you, other ways we catch birds. We have a couple other things. We have this trap over here. This is the Potter trap, and I always just call it the Potter trap because that's kind of the first type that I was introduced to, was called a potter trap. But there's kind of all kinds of different designs to this. It's basically, and it was really hard to try to take a picture for you to see how this works. It's pretty much impossible. You'll just have to come to a banding program. But basically, you put seed in here, and the door is propped open by a lever that's attached to this little piece on the swivel that the bird steps on right before it gets to the seed, and then the door falls down behind it. It's pretty darn effective. It can have some issues with it where you set it really lightly and a blue jay lands on top and it'll trigger the door, but it'll also get squirrels and chipmunks in it, which is not a big deal. And then this one on the left is pretty interesting. This was here when I got here. It's just a homemade ground trap, and it's very much like a lobster trap. It uses the funnel effect, and it's very unforgiving for my students who don't listen to details about where to put bait. So it's quite it's a good lesson for them. Same thing with this one, but the ground trap really. And then I just reach in with a butterfly net to scoop out this. It attracts birds like ground feeding birds, doves, sparrows. It'll attract even turkeys sometimes. I'll get a turkey in that stupid thing, and then I try to very carefully let it go. The hardest part of this is extracting a bird from the net, and that is quite a skill, I guess. I just do it unconsciously now, but it's not easy. And some birds will be in there just a couple seconds, and you'll think they've been in there for hours, the way they get tangled. So that's where it's pretty much only me who can do that on the staff right now. Sometimes kids are interested, employees are interested, and they get better at it. But most of the time, it's really tough. People panic; they're afraid of hurting the bird. All natural, instincts. But it's definitely tough. The first thing you have to do is figure out, if you didn't see, figure out which side the bird entered the net in. That's the main thing. And then keep your cool. You can see you got lots of heads staring at you. You have some people who are like, you're hurting it. It's yelling, it's screaming. So you have to keep a cool head when you're doing it. And then putting it in the bag, transferring it from hand to bag is always a risk. But that's not the hardest thing. So this bird here, the cardinal, this is the bird probably that I least want to see in the net. It's definitely a crowd pleaser, and everyone oohs and ahs about it. But if you ever handle one, you know what's going to happen. You're going to get chomped on. Okay, these grosbeaks, they are going to chomp on you, and it's going to hurt. So it's very hard not to curse when something like this is happening and you have 4- and 5-year-olds around. And then the other one you might be surprised that is dreaded as a bird bander is the chickadee. The chickadee, even though he does not bite hard, he pecks, and he pecks the same place over and over and over again on your knuckle. And if you hold him too long, some kid in the front row is going to say, "You're killing it. It's bleeding. You're killing it." And you're going to say, "No, kid, that's my blood." So these are the worst birds to see in your net. And basically we're writing down, some of you probably know this, we're recording band number that we're putting on, what species it is, sex, age, and then sometimes we'll weigh the bird. We're not required to weigh the bird, but we are weighing birds. Specifically, we are trying to weigh all the titmice that we catch over and over and over again. And we're trying to correlate that with the habitat. And we pick titmice because titmice are non-migratory for the most part, and they're eating a lot of different varieties of food. So I'm kind of using that to indicate some of the work that we've been doing on the property and things like that. You're also looking for, so some of the techniques you're using here is you're blowing on birds and bellies in the springtime, looking for brood patches versus cloacal protuberances. That's a big thing. So birds that are not sexually dimorphic, like titmice, for instance, you can tell males from females during breeding season because the females will have this bare patch of skin underneath their contour feathers. But you have to blow those contour feathers out of the way to see. And that's for putting the bare patch of skin against the eggs to keep them warm. And then boys will have a cloacal protuberance. And I'll let you decide what exactly that is. And then, of course, this is a measure to, if you're not sure, some species will take, like blue jays may take a couple different sizes of a band. So you may want to measure it to see what size it takes. But most species, like for instance, tufted titmice, they take one size and one size only. And then this is the titmouse. This is the way we weigh the titmice in a juice can. And I actually use a sock as well to make sure they're in there. And then, so to age some of the, we've been catching a lot of juvenile titmice this year. And one of the best ways to actually tell that this time of year is to look at the beak. Like you can see this beak is not fully black. You can even see a little yellow there at the corner that they have when they're in the nest. And if you look inside the beak too, at the roof of the mouth, you'll see the patterns that show that it's one of the ways of proving it's a young bird. And then some of the other things are like, for instance, here you're looking at the tail feathers, outer tail feathers of chickadees. That's pretty diagnostic. But sometimes the wording is a pain in the neck and very ambiguous. It drives me crazy still, and it is very hard for new banders or college students to do this. You know, it's like here you have to also know all the abbreviations for all those feathers too. Like the coverts are tinged brownish and warm, grayer, fresher. Okay, a lot of ishes and relatively abraded, relatively broad. Okay. So sometimes that can be really tough for kids who just want black and white. And then attaching the band with these pliers, aluminum bands, they don't rust. They're very light. They really don't affect the birds in any way negatively. And release, which is the fun part. So a lot of times you show how birds are different by how they actually fly away. You know, you'll catch a sparrow and you'll say, which way will this bird go? Will this bird go high up into the tree? Will this bird go low along the ground? Will this bird head to the bushes? Will this bird head to the open spot? So that's another way a great way to kind of make that point that birds are different. And you can actually, if you know about the bird, you can predict where it's going to go. A lot of times something like a sparrow will fly right between kids' legs who are sitting at the benches. So just going to show you some of the other birds that we banded, and then we'll wrap this up. I don't know how I'm doing for time. This is probably one of the ovenbird, one of the best birds ever. A lot of these guys during the summer, it gets quite annoying. So we have palm warbler here, blue jays, of course, a lot of young blue jays during the summer as well that we're catching. So they had a pretty decent nesting season, probably. Blue jays kind of showing what I consider to be their kind of, you know, subservient kind of posturing that they do. Such a social bird. I don't remember this veery, but that's a great bird to catch. When you catch something like a thrush, you have to be careful, because most likely in the fall, they've been eating berries and you know they're going to poop on you. And it's going to be purple and it's going to stain. So usually you point that end away from you. Summertime, sometimes when our mulberries are ripened, and if it's timed right, they've been early, but sometimes they'll be when these little guys come out of the nest, and you'll get tanagers and orioles caught in the nets too. And then we get some of the, usually, you know, you're not going to get upper canopy stuff. That's why this red-eyed vireo is such a cool, rare one. But, you know, black-throated blue is warblers not unheard of, I should say. And then orioles and goldfinches. And then this is my epiphany bird. So this is my first bird as a young boy who I said, I actually noticed a difference in birds, because I noticed this bird at my parents' bird feeder, and I'm like, that's different. And he was doing that double-footed hop scratch. And I was like, what is that? Is there a bird book in this house? And I think my mom had a Peterson guide, and that's when I first kind of like, hey, birds are different. They're not all the same. And we have black and white warbler here, and chestnut-sided warbler right here. Okay, so I want you guys to think, what are my favorite birds to teach with? So you might be surprised. Cowbirds. You could, if I catch a cowbird, I can talk for an hour. Okay, great. Lots of different things you can talk about with cowbirds. Most of them negative, of course. And then woodpeckers. Woodpeckers, just so many varieties and adaptations that they have. You can see here the tongue with the sharp pointed spear, barbed spear on the end. You could talk about these guys forever too, and talk about, biomimicry and all, just crazy, great for teaching. And probably I would say the rarest bird that I've caught, and some of my birds that I caught was before cell phones, so I didn't have time to dig out those photos. But this guy right here, great crested flycatcher, just a magnificent bird, magnificent bird. And plus a high canopy bird, so you can imagine my nets are down near the ground, so pretty tough bird to catch. I think I've maybe caught 2 in 30 years. So I had a question for you guys. We've been starting to manage in anticipation for thornetary warblers, and possibly even nesting eventually here with climate change and things like that. And I just wanted to get your feedback at the end here. If anybody wants to give me feedback on that. Let me show you some videos real quick, trail camera videos. Oh, there we go. So that's an otter. So these are the owls. Look at this little guy, he can't get under, so he finally goes over. I was torn when I saw this as a wildlife manager. Oh no, twins, great. Oh, and then this, see if you guys get this, just the tail end, so to speak. Did you get that? It's a bobcat.